our intentions to work with our affiliates during the course of the year to have 2 or 3 different activities that are specifically directed at the affiliates in the wealth management sphere, but with some other spokes within that sphere, so that you can see that our connections are valuable to providing the full wealth management experience to your prospective clients. Estate planning is such a big portion of the whole financial plan. It doesn't always get all the attention that it deserves, but it's our intention today to go a little bit deeper with planning for your estate, both in kind of a living will and your health expectancy, as well as your planned giving. So let me just give you just a couple of housekeeping rules. The first one is, during the presentation, if you've got questions, I would ask that you would just type them into the chat, and we will use those questions at the end of the respective presentation, and they will be addressed at that point. So that's number one. Number two, we would really ask that you mute yourself during the presentation so that we don't have the background noise. You know how that goes. Bells, doorbells ringing, children running in. This just will help for the presenters. So those are the 2 things. 3, this session is being recorded, and 4, there is PD being given out at the end. So that's the housekeeping rules. And if you'll give me a moment of your time, I'd like to introduce Mark Halpern, who's been a friend of Wealth Stewards, Portfolio Stewards for a long time. Mark Halpern is a CFP. Let me just do this a little better. CFP, TEP, MFA-P, and is widely recognized as one of Canada's top life insurance advisors. He's the CEO of wealthinsurance.com and illnessprotection.com. If you live in the Greater Toronto Area, you've likely heard him on numerous radio stations educating the public about the need for insurance and other estate planning issues. Investment Executive TV interviewed Mark about his work with charities and teaching fellow advisors how to incorporate planned giving into their professional practices. He writes frequent articles for the Tax Letter and Investors Digest of Canada, and is often quoted in national media and financial industry publications. He's a member of a number of associations, including the Toronto Estate Planning Council, the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners, Canadian Association of Gift Planners, CALU, Professional Advisory Council of Sick Kids Foundation, the Promised Legacy Council of St. Joe's Health Foundation, and Planned Advisory Committee of TVO. He's a professional advisor in the Task Force for St. Mike's Children's Foundation and chair of the Professional Advisory Committee and trustee at the Jewish Foundation of Toronto. So in his spare time, which I can't imagine there's much of it, Mark is the president of Ashish HaTorah Toronto and teaches leadership and business ethics courses at the University of Toronto, York University, Ryerson, and the University of Western Ontario. He's an active member of the Professional Advisory Committee for the United Jewish Association Foundation and other nonprofit boards. He helps develop planned giving programs for hospitals, foundations, educational institutions, and other charities. We're honored with our association with Mark, and thank you for taking the time to share some of the important tax strategies associated with planned giving with us. Take it away, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really wonderful to be here. And I also really want to thank you, Peggy, and Wealth Stewards. You have a very unique offering to a very interesting community across the country of tax professionals. And I'm so delighted to be part of that team to be able to offer my services. Just as a top line, COVID, of course, has changed all of our lives, and it's probably been our busiest time ever. For 30 years of professional practice, we tried to convince people they were going to die one day, and nobody believed us. And it took a global plague for people to be much more aware of their mortality, and obviously all their incompletions, not having will structures in place, insurance, etc. But one area that hasn't gotten attention is their area of legacy. People have been giving money, donating to charity, but they haven't actually created a legacy for their family, or call it going from success to significance. And I will just add one more thing before we get into the nuts and bolts. I did a presentation. I'm on the St. Joe's Hospital Foundation board, and I did an event for their board of directors, excuse me, and their top major donors. And at the very end, the president of the foundation board, a layman, said the following. He said, Mark, I'm a reasonably intelligent person. And Mark, I'm a reasonably successful person as well. But I only knew about 2% of everything you spoke about today. How come? And how come our members don't know about that? So that's really what I want to share with you today, some insight of things that you probably don't know and your clients don't know as well, because we as the gatekeepers have an opportunity to help our clients in a big way, not only save tax, but create legacies for their families. So of course, make sure you get proper professional help before attempting to do any of this on your own. We have an old new government in Ottawa. The Liberals are back in, and apparently they see how frustrated we are. So they're going to be introducing apparently a new simplified tax return with only one question starting this year. How much money did you make? Send it to us. Now, we joke around, but we know that there's a big reality out there for all of our clients. Number one is a tax risk. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when taxes are going up, wealth tax, inheritance tax, capital gains tax increasing. People don't realize how much taxes they're paying. And the second thing to compound that is most of Canadians have done no planning whatsoever. And I'm sure you can all appreciate that as CPAs. They've been really great at building stuff, but not really good at doing the defense. So that's a big risk for them as well, because as a result, they have a lack of information in terms of what options they have. The other part is a legacy risk. We're really the gatekeepers, and we can help our clients create legacies for their families and for generations to come. There's also a client risk. Somebody else is going to be talking to your clients about legacy, and we want it to be you. And if you're involved with any charities whatsoever, certainly there's a risk at the charitable side as well, because they're always spending time creating money to keep the lights on, and maybe they do a capital campaign every 3 to 5 years. But if you were in business and the majority of your revenue came from one client, you wouldn't sleep at night worrying about what would happen to that client. Well, the charities also, unless they're talking about legacy plan giving, they're also at risk. And you'll probably hear about this new initiative that came up through the Canadian Association of Gift Planners. It's called Willpower. It was actually started in the UK many years ago, where the statistics saw that only 5% of people who actually had wills put a bequest in there to charity. So they did a huge marketing campaign over 10 years, bumped that from 5% to 9%, and that represents $50 billion of new charity in the US. We've now launched this through the Canadian Association of Gift Planners in September, and the objective is to create $40 billion of new charity in Canada. So you're going to hear a lot about it: newspaper, radio, TV, billboard, bus shelter, and people are going to be inquiring. So I think it's very important for you to know about it and get involved. Now, I say that I started in this business 30 years ago, but my real start was actually 47 years ago, March the 8th, 1974. And that's when my father, of blessed memory, died of a massive heart attack at the age of 50. I was 11 and I was the youngest of 4 boys. And my mother, who was 48 at the time, had to go back to work to support our family. It was tough for us. The reason was that my father was a busy engineer and there was no will, very little savings, and no life insurance. Fast forward, I work with some of Canada's most successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and families, and you'd think they'd have it all together. But I would suggest 80% of the time, it's not true. They're so busy working and taking care of everything else when it comes to themselves, they don't have wills in place. Basic planning. So what our company does is 3 things. We do estate planning, making sure that the financial architecture and furniture they started with actually aligns with today. The second area we're involved with is tax minimization strategies using tax-exempt life insurance. And then the third area is philanthropy. We're helping people create legacies, often by converting taxes into charity. And that's really what we're going to talk about today: tax and philanthropy. And really, I wish I could say people come to me and say, I want to give $10 million to charity. Yes, they do at times, but it really has to be part of your overall planning process. And this is just a big picture of all the things that our clients need to look at. I was just on a call a couple of hours ago with a fellow that came to me from one of the charities. He's on the board and he has a net worth of over $10 million. And we looked at this list, and again, he only had primary wills. He didn't have secondary wills, things probate. people really need to give this some attention. But as you can see, charitable plan giving is always the conversation that comes out. And I'd say this is really the most important part for our client discussions. And that is our clients accumulate a lot of wealth as they go through life. And eventually they start encroaching on that money, or their estate will continue to grow or levelize. But at the end of the day, unless they were to invest all their money in a penny stock or start spending frivolously, chances are they're going to have more money when they die than what they have today. So really what that means that they're the custodian or trustee for a lot of money for the next generation. But what they're not realizing is that they're partnering with the tax department on that money. So it's really important to do the planning. Make sure they get a big check mark. They're never going to run out of money. Bunch of assumptions. This is the tax today. This is the tax of life expectancy. And let's see, is there some never spend money they're not spending that we could use to preserve their estate entirely for their family or for charity or for both? And why do we have to do this? Because there's a lot of taxes out there. People are surprisingly unaware of all the assets that they have that are going to be taxable. In Ontario, this is just the taxes, as everyone knows, due on death. Registered assets, 53.5%. Any appreciation in investment real estate or business equity or appreciated shares, 27%. Corporate holdings could be 47 to 70% without proper planning. Passive income, probate taxes. What it really comes down to is somebody can feel very good that they're worth $10 million until we meet them and show them that they're only worth $6.5 million. That gets their attention because that allows us to do some planning clearly while the sun is shining. So how do we introduce these conversations to clients? We explain that every single person has three possible beneficiaries to their estate. You have family, you have the government, and you have charity. And each of us can only pick two. Which two would you pick? Most people would say family and charity. But really, with proper planning, you can actually be remembered for giving a lot of money to charity as opposed to writing a big check to the tax department. And people, once they've done all of their planning, actually would love to see a way to, there's a big fear that people are going to disinherit their children. I'm going to disinherit my kids. But really, what charitable plan giving is adopting a charity and disinheriting the tax department. That's really what we want to get to. So how do we do it? Taxes, I just want to say, are very much a key part of our country. We live in a great country and it's all driven by tax. But I love this quote from Morgan Stanley. You must pay taxes, but there's no law that says that you have to leave a tip. And that's really what we're getting at. So what do? We create what we call accidental philanthropists or accidental philanthropy. What's that? You can have two people. Some people just by nature, their DNA is they're givers. They grew up with that in their family. That was how I was brought up. You just gave back to the community. And then there are those people who aren't like that. They didn't necessarily get that education. But once those people find out that they have a choice where their taxes go and they could give those to charity, suddenly they become accidental philanthropists. And the other people who are already giving can now give more for the same amount or give the same amount for less cost in a more efficient way. And here are just what I call your best accidental philanthropists that you should be thinking about within your client portfolio. Widows, divorcees, and singles. There's no tax-free spousal rollover to the surviving spouse because there's no surviving spouse. So they have a big tax disposition. You need to have a conversation with them. Anybody who's sold or will be selling a business or investment real estate or appreciated securities, also a great group to speak to because that year they're going to have their biggest sale, biggest sort of liquidity event. They're also going to have their biggest tax bill. And that's the year that they can give the most amount of money to charity and get the money back to their families. We'll see in a case study later. Any of your clients who have done or will be doing an estate freeze, the donation of private share donations versus public non-registered securities is a big opportunity for us and for our clients. Any of your clients that have appreciated non-registered securities and they're going to have a tax bill in April, donate them now, as we'll see. If you have a foundation or a donor advised fund, you could leverage that more. If you have an old life insurance policy you no longer need, you can turn that into a tax saving and a legacy gift. Or if you have an estate tax bill that's going to be due on death, or you're leaving a gift already and a bequest in your will, there are ways to do it in a more favorable basis to have even bigger impact. Simple math, just keep this very high level. For every $2 that you donate to charity, you save $1 of tax. So $2 equals $1 of tax savings. The neat part is that the government since 1995 has introduced 25 pieces of legislation to encourage Canadians to give. So they say, we'll let you use up to 75%. You can actually use charitable receipts to offset up to 75% of your annual taxes due. 75%. And any amounts over and above that can be carried forward for up to 5 years. And on death, receipts can actually be used to offset 100% of estate taxes, and you can go back to the prior year as well. So it's an amazing way of creating charity and saving taxes. So here are just some high-level gifting options. We know about gifting in a will, a bequest, an RRSP RRIF beneficiary. We'll see gifting securities and gifting life insurance. We're going to talk about those today. So let's first talk about gifting in a will, a bequest. Encourage your clients to change their will and include a charity for a specific amount or percentage of their estate. Remember, $2 charity, $1 tax saving. If they don't want to change their will, well, they might have RSPs or RRIFs, in which case you can notify the financial institution and get what's known as a multiple beneficiary form to be able to give money to charity as part of the beneficiary designation. And why do I bring up RSPs and RRIFs? Because it is the biggest tax time bomb that our clients have. It's not unusual to have somebody with $2 million in registered money. The first thing they have to realize, it's not worth $2 million. It's only worth $920,000. Because if they take it out, they're taxed. And if they leave it and it's paid out at death, it's taxed at almost 54%. So we have strategies to keep that full amount for the family and give money to charity using some of the cash flow, or donating the entire amount or a portion of it to charity today to create some charity if they don't need those RSPs. And we talked already about giving cash, checks, and credit cards. That's the most inefficient way for people to give money to charity. Here's an example where somebody, instead of donating $50,000 of cash, where they need to make 100, pay the tax to have 50, to make a donation to save 25. Here's somebody who had $50,000 in non-registered appreciated securities with a cost base of $10,000. So there's a $40,000 gain. If they sold those, they would pay $10,800 of taxes. But the government says if you donate those 50,000 in shares, there's no capital gains tax. So you save the full 10,800 and you get a receipt for the 50,000. So the first thing our clients have to realize is they're not worth $50,000. Their value is only less than $40,000. Okay, because of the capital gains taxes. So it's perfect time right now as an end of year strategy. Donate those shares to offset taxes that are going to be due in April. Maybe set up a donor advised fund or donate them directly to charity. If you set up a donor advised fund, it's a place to park the money, and your families can use that money going forward for any registered charities in Canada. Corporate securities are even better. You donate those $50,000 in shares with a $10,000 cost base, and a $50,000 is now a deduction for the company. There's no capital gains taxes. And the gain of $40,000 can be credited to the CDA and come out of the company tax-free. What a great way. Here we think TOSI's over. Here's a way of getting money out of your company tax-free to your kids. Now, we've done this before where somebody had a very large amount of stock and they donated it to their own foundation. And then what they did was they'd use life insurance to replace that money back to their family. So now they're not out of pocket. It's just a timing issue. Great way to convert taxes into charity. We don't have a lot of tax shelters left in Canada. These are kind of like, I call these the final four: your principal residence, TFSAs. Lottery winnings are still not taxed here, so don't buy your lottery tickets when you go to Florida this winter, and tax-exempt life insurance. Other than these four, there's somebody that we must love at the CRA because they have their hand out and want to participate in our good fortune and our good investment decisions, other than these four. So it's really important to understand how can these benefit us. And not all donations are the same. This is an example of the after-tax cost of a donation of $1 million. Remember, it's scalable. But as you can see, donating $1 million of cash costs 50 cents for every dollar. Donating public company shares, let's say assuming a zero cost base, only 23 cents per dollar. Flow-through shares, if they're available and depending on what jurisdiction, can be anywhere from 5 to 15 cents a dollar. And then life insurance, as you can see here on $1 million policy, paid up over 10 years, is only 12 cents per dollar. So these are things that people definitely have to be aware of. So let's talk about gifting life insurance. All of our clients have old life insurance policies. They could have a portfolio that they bought that policy for, when their kids were young, they had a mortgage, income replacement, a shareholders agreement. They don't need that policy anymore, and it will not move the dial on their family's estate planning. Wouldn't it be better to take that policy where you can get a fair market value for that policy, donate it to charity to save taxes today, and going forward, the premiums you pay are considered charitable donations. So you get a receipt for that and save taxes. In some cases, if the policy is really good, meaning the person's health has gone awry and their life expectancy is shortened, the charities will actually pay for these policies going forward. So I got an advisor reached out to me. He had a client with $1.25 million of term life insurance policies. His health had gone awry. Now at Parkinson's, we got a valuation on those policies of $520,000. They were converted when they got transferred over to the charity. So he got $520,000 charitable receipt that saves him $260,000. And he's recognized for giving $1.25 million to charity. And we found a donor with that charity to pay those premiums forward. So again, don't let those policies fall by the wayside. If somebody has $1 million estate tax, why not consider getting a new $2 million life insurance policy and donating that to charity? The $2 million on death will go to charity, create a $2 million charitable receipt. Now $1 million of taxes saved now becomes charity. And again, you did that all for pennies on the dollar. And the last thing is just consider telling your clients to change the beneficiary on their current insurance, include a certain amount or percentage to charity. Remember, $2 to charity saves $1 of tax. And be aware of the 3 and 10-year rules with regard to donating policies. So don't do this by yourself. Please reach out to us and we're happy to assist. And here's just an example of a 60-year-old couple with a wealth transfer for some personal money. On the left-hand side has nothing to do with insurance. They're basically taking $100,000 every year of after-tax money and investing it for 15 years at 4%. So they're putting away $1.5 million. After 20 years, it's only worth about $2 million. And after 30 years, it's only worth 2.3. It hasn't even doubled because of the tax grind. On the right-hand side, what we're doing is we're saying here, we're going to take $100,000 a year, but we want to shelter it with insurance. So in that case, you have to buy a $2.5 million policy. We're going to put the same $1.5 million away every year, over 10 years. But look, at year 20, it's worth 4.3. At year 30, it's worth 4.2. We've created almost $2 million more money for our clients, which they can then use for charity. And again, just to understand how the power of this works, the left side of your investment advisor would have to earn 9.6% compounded to do what the right-hand side is doing. So it's definitely something to give consideration to. Here's a big secret. Life insurance can be owned and paid for by a private foundation or a donor-advised fund. That means your charitable money can be used to fund insurance to create even more transformational charity. So it's really something that you should definitely be aware of. Other tax minimization through philanthropy. We talked about foundations. Yes, you can set up a private foundation, but that's for somebody who's got $1 million or more of charitable money. And then there's some setup costs and annual reporting. Or you can set up what's known as a donor advised fund, which is where you piggyback a community foundation like the Toronto Foundation, the Jewish Foundation, the Barrie Foundation, Canada Gives, the Burlington Foundation, whatever. They'll give you their umbrella and then you put your named fund underneath it. They take care of all the admin, but you get one receipt and you can actually have someone distribute money to charity for you on your behalf. Very efficient. Find out about it. Something that you should let your clients know. We talked about flow through shares already. We'll talk about private share donation strategies shortly, but here's a big list. If you have clients who need income, they should look at getting a charitable gift annuity where they donate money to charity, get about a 6% return on their money, and get a charitable receipt for about half of the money they donated. Charitable remainder trusts, CPP philanthropy. I'll just touch on that for a moment. To me, this is like golden. You must have clients who are getting CPP at age 65 that they don't need. It's taxed, they reinvest it, and it's taxed again. But if they're philanthropic, they could take that $26,000 and acquire about a $1.5 million life insurance policy. If the policy is owned by charity, then the $26,000 of CPP is considered a charitable donation. They pay no tax on that, and they've now created a $1.5 million legacy. Alternatively, take the CPP, pay the tax on it, get the policy, but have the beneficiary be a charity upon death, which would save the estate about $750,000 of taxes. Or the third option is take the CPP, pay taxes on it, get the insurance policy, and make your children the beneficiary of that, and instead donate your registered money. Remember that the example before of the $2 million of RSP that's only worth $920? Well, in this case, the family's getting 1.5 and charity's making $2 million. Beautiful strategy. You can buy insurance where there's a beneficiary of the charity, and upon death, the premiums you've paid go back to your family. So you're never out of pocket, but you've created a gift. The gift maximizer is a way of taking insurance and actually benefiting from it while you're alive. So the charity benefits from it as well, or your donor advised fund benefits up from it. Why? Because it's owned by a charity. You can use the dividends to be paid out every year to charity, and there's no tax on that. And the cash surrender value is also almost like a line of credit. It's also available to be borrowed from to use for charity. A great idea. Lastly, the policy preserver. There's approximately $7 billion of term life insurance every year that falls off the books in Canada because it becomes too expensive, or people don't need it, or maybe they don't have a company anymore to have a buy-sell agreement. Don't let those policies fall by the wayside. They can be converted into permanent insurance with no medical evidence necessary, and you can get a fair market valuation on it and donate it to charity. Don't let those things fall apart. A couple of last case studies, and then we'll wrap up. This is a case where a family sold some real estate. They sold $120 million of real estate, and there was going to be a $20 million tax bill. As I said, that's the year they have the biggest tax bill, but the most they can give to charity. Instead, what they did was they were asked, would you be interested in being philanthropic? And they said yes, so I got introduced to them. We took 40 million of the 120 and we set up a private foundation. Now what happened is the $20 million of tax becomes $20 million of charity. Problem is that the kids are out of pocket $40 million. So we use life insurance on a joint last to die basis to be able to repatriate that $40 million back to the family. So for pennies on the dollar and just a timing issue, the family's made whole. We've created a legacy, and we converted taxes into charity. Again, a great opportunity for clients. Your clients who have done an estate freeze and now they have private company shares. We know about donating public shares, but you can donate private shares. So another advisor came to me where there was a $28 million freeze done and a $7 million tax bill. What we did was we donated the shares to charity and instead turned that $7 million of tax into $14 million of charity. The tax went down to $500,000. And the icing on the cake was we created a $6 million CDA for the next generation. The cost to do all of that was just under $2 million using a leveraging strategy. Again, very efficient. RRIFs and RRSPs where people don't need them. You can actually donate those today, all or some, to a charity or to a donor advised fund. There'll be no withholding tax when you get it out of the institution. There's a tax of 53.5%, but there's a 50% credit for the charity. So you're doing that all at a cost of 3.5%. And then if you want to take it one step further, you can actually use that money in the donor advised fund, the charity, and buy insurance from that and make it even into more money. So we took one client with a $2 million RSP and $1 million tax, and we created $4.5 million of charity, all by moving the stones around. Liquidity events. I know we're short on time, so I just want to move forward. Forgivers. There's some people who want to remain completely anonymous, don't put my name anywhere. Others give money because they want to set an example for others to follow in their place. Others want to be remembered, have my name on a wall or a building. And others know that giving to charity is great for business. People like to do business with people who are philanthropic. Here's a couple that we worked with who gave $1 million insurance donation to St. Joe's Hospital at a net cost of $4,000 a year for 20 years. So that's $80,000 to be recognized for giving $1 million. Boy, did they leverage that, and you can too. Last part is, when it comes to this conversation with our clients, if I ask everybody on this call, do you know the names of your grandparents? I'm sure most of you do. But how many of you know the names of your great-grandparents? This is actually a picture of my great-grandparents, Aaron and Liba Gross, in 1934 of blessed memory, before they died in the Holocaust. Imagine if on January the 1st, you received an envelope in the mail and inside there was a check for $10,000 from your great grandfather. You think you'd remember their name? So with proper planning, we can actually provide our clients with an opportunity to have this legacy. And it's really the values and the morals and the social responsibility that we really want to teach to our children, but even more so to our grandchildren. And we really have to take advantage of this clearly while the sun is shining. This past week, one of my clients' fathers passed away. He was a man in his late 80s, and he introduced me to him several years ago. We ended up setting up a donor advised fund, donated some stock. Now, upon his death, there's going to be a donation of some RRIFs. There's probably about $2 million of money that we created for charity and not the tax man. And that's something that he's leaving as a legacy. I didn't get paid on that. I was just so grateful and privileged that I was able to set that up. That makes me feel really good about what I do. 48-hour rule, whatever you learned today, do something, one thing within 48 hours. Otherwise, we get carried away and get distracted elsewhere. If you want, reach out to me, mark@wealthinsurance.com. I have a tax letter digest with so many articles and one pages on all the concepts we spoke about. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I post a lot on charity. Consider joining the Canadian Association of Gift Planners. Get your MFAP, which is a Master Financial Advisor in Philanthropy. Great designation. Learn about it and collaborate. We're here as a resource, but don't ignore it. There's just too much riding on the line. Last thing I like to tell people is consider your own legacy gift. Here's an example of somebody giving $1 million life insurance policy on a single life of a person for 10 years only, and the net after-tax cost on the right-hand side. If you were to do this on a joint last to die basis, the cost would probably come down somewhere between 30 and 40%. So it's a very powerful way to create transformational charity, save taxes, and create legacies for families. And with that, I will end and say thank you very much. Here's my contact information. I'd love to hear from any of you, and I can answer some questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. That was a really great presentation. Very informative. Peggy, did you have any discussion questions?
I have a couple of questions for you, Mark, that have come through. And so in your experience, what is the legacy? Just a second, so I can get this correct. What is the best way to engage a family in this philanthropic area / legacy?
So again, as I mentioned, it really should be part of a plan. It needs to be part of a planning process. And hopefully we're all doing that real deep dive financial planning to find money or find an opportunity. So families have to first feel good that they're okay financially. They're not going to run out of money, helping the kids out. You guys have all heard of Freedom 55, right? So Freedom 55 today is when your youngest kid is 55. I mean, we're going to be helping them from a lot longer period of time. So it could be something. I really feel that the gateway to this is just leaving a gift in your will. Just leaving a gift. It's a bequest or something in your will. Why? Because it starts the whole conversation. They say that marijuana is the gateway to heavy narcotics. Leaving a gift in your will is the gateway to a much bigger conversation about planning. But hopefully what you can do is the more planning you do for your client, the more sort of assets they have and the more different products they have sitting around, you can actually turn into charity, and they're going to really appreciate you bringing that to their attention.
I understand that. My question, I guess, is, do you engage the family in these kinds of activities? Would you be a promoter of doing like a yearly family meeting where these are on the table? Because my thinking is that wills in the past, people didn't know who was getting what, and it was all kept close to the chest. Nobody wanted to talk about it. But I think we're becoming more open, and I think it's really important to have family meetings. Are you a promoter of that?
Oh, big promoter. I just had a conversation this morning with one of my clients. They're a family worth about $40 million. We're talking about having a facilitator, somebody come to their client meetings because, mom and dad have done very well. They passed the business along through a freeze to the next generation. There are 3 kids there. And then some growth is passed along now to G3. And that actually the grandchildren are going to be worth more than the parents, based on how but it's really about having that conversation that we've been blessed. We've been very successful. We need to give back. What's important? And having those conversations, each person's going to have a different idea of what it means to give back and what does it mean to be significant. Something very simple that families can do is setting up a donor advised fund and telling all of your children or your grandkids, here, every year, I'm giving you $1,000 to give away to charity. But it's on the condition that you have to research the charity, find out about it, report back to me, and maybe get involved in some way. In which case you've already gotten a tax benefit. It's sitting there and it has to be distributed, but that's going to get these kids involved much more in wanting to do something good going forward. It's like you're sort of building that struggle muscle or that charity muscle.
Thank you. And I think the next question is, at what age should you start this? And when you're saying, give your children $1,000, are you suggesting this is in their 20s, in their teens?
Well, most people are looking at this when they feel like I've arrived. In other words, they feel like they've got more than they need. Like, in other words, they're going to be okay. Like, and who's that? It's really, I would say, the people sort of 50 years of age plus, have gone through the trenches, built up their assets, maybe now are looking at, the stuff that you do at Wealth Stewards. It's now about preserving what you have, maximizing your income and looking at tax efficiency. So it's a different mindset at that stage. And that's when you can be introducing more of the philanthropic side. But it has to be part of every conversation without a doubt.
Thank you. And here's the final question. And this is from me because I've spoken to a couple of the accountants who are on this call, and they actually have clients who have a lot of money to give away. They don't have any children. They really don't have family. They don't really know how to give the money away. How does the accountant start to address this? And should we be doing something like what you've just done, and a lunch and learn with some of the accountants for their clients?
I look at this group here. Let's say we have 20 people. I don't see 20 people here. I see 2,000 people, because each of you are connected to at least 100 people or families. That means we're really the gatekeepers, and our clients don't know about this. They really don't. And it's really, if it's going to happen, it's going to be coming from us. So I agree. Having an event where you bring your families, just a conversation like this, where it's on tax minimization or philanthropy, or maximizing income impact, minimizing taxes, either for your own accounting firm or for your families, that I find is the best way to sort of pass it over, because then it's not, you don't have to become the expert. You're really providing them with wisdom and knowledge. And if they have a desire to follow up, then I'm here as a resource to work with you and work with those families and with their professional advisors to be able to create something that's very much bespoke for that family. But that's it. Or just send them off information. Like if you connect with me on LinkedIn, or you get my tax letter digest or the one pagers on these strategies that I've outlined, you send them something. Say, hey, this is something I think is very interesting. What do you think? Is this something that would be of interest? You've just done an estate freeze. Maybe we can bring Mark in and, have a conversation about how this could be effective. But it's really just starting that conversation and having a process. Eventually they will come around. There's a long runway, you should know, Peggy. I wish I could say it was instant coffee and right away people say, I'm in.
I understand.
We've been working with clients 10 years, 20 years to finally, timing is everything. So got to start.
Thank you. Mark, I want to really thank you for what you've shared with us today. Of course, the people on this line are totally engaged in what it means to a client to have some tax strategies. So thank you for that. And I'm sure many of them will go away thinking, who are the two groups of people that they want to be inheriting their money? So, Mark, thank you for posing that question, and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and everybody. It was very nice to meet you. Stay well, and just take care of all this stuff while the sun is shining. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay, all the best.